Hello humans, and welcome to Inside RoboCo, a series that's all about our robotics sandbox game, RoboCo. Today, I'm joined by lead game designer Luke, along with fellow game designer Alan, for a closer look at our challenge campaign.
In RoboCo, when you start the game, you have a choice of going to a sandbox mode or to the campaign. In the campaign mode, there's a series of challenges where you will build robots to solve certain human needs. I think at this point everyone knows deliver a sandwich to the customer at the table. And each of those challenges consists of several objectives. As you complete each objective, you earn bits, and those are used to unlock new parts and new challenges. And inside each challenge, you'll also find lots of fun secrets and environmental things to explore. Right, so in each challenge, you're given a main objective as well as a couple sub-objectives. So the main objective would be something like cut down these trees and load them onto the truck. And then sub-objectives are either optional steps you could do along the way or just ways that you could refine your performance on one of the steps. So a sub-objective might be remove all the branches before cutting the tree, or to keep all the cut trees inside the target zone. The reason we set up the challenges with multiple objectives like that is then if you're just beginning, you focus more on the main objective. You could skip some extra steps or conditions, or if you want to jump right in and try to do it all at once, you can. And that just gives each challenge this nice range of difficulty where there's a lower skill floor and a higher skill ceiling.
Designing a new challenge level is always a very exciting process, starting from the top where we got kind of a lot of ideas in our head and this blank slate to work with. And so I often find I'm questioning some of the ideas we're coming up with to actually check if they fit well into RoboCo. So one of the questions I like to ask is, is a challenge that comes out of this new idea, is it going to be new and exciting for the player? And what this really means is, is it going to be a different experience than something they've already experienced in a previous challenge? And there's ways, of course, that we can do this with, aesthetic, by having like a different environment, new props, theming, the humans doing different things. But at its core, we want to make sure that we're kind of pushing the player to build a robot that they've never really had to try and build before. Because even if you're in a completely new environment, if you're still using the same robot that you built way back in Bistro to complete this new challenge, it's ultimately going to feel more or less the same. And so often when we're thinking about these ideas of what a new challenge is, we'll kind of be thinking through in our heads as a team, like what kind of robots are we going to be building for this challenge? And if it is some kind of robot that, we've never had to try and build before, that's a great sign. And of course, once we have that idea, that's when I actually hop into Unity 3D, which is the game engine we use for developing RoboCo, and that's when I get to prototyping. Once we get it to a place where it's playable and you can play through the objective and complete it, that's when we start testing as a team and, really gathering our feedback in one place to kind of find out, what's working, what's fun in our experience, and more importantly, like, what's not working, what do we not think is fun about this challenge, or at least in its prototyping state. Because that feedback of what's not working is ultimately what I'll then use to, go back into Unity and start iterating on the challenge, and hopefully just try and improve it every step of the way. But once we get it in a place where, we're like, we for sure want this in the game, that's when we then hand it off to artists, and they kind of do their magic to make it look like an actual level that would exist inside RoboCo. And this starts from the concepting phase, so usually a 2D artist will kind of do a paint over of the layout we have to kind of envision some props or environmental features that you might see within this space. And then with that, the 3D artist can then start actually creating those props and, what these assets actually look like in Unity. And that's always an exciting process because usually once that happens, the challenge starts to feel real. We start to get more ideas out of it over, like this new prop. We could do like a secret objective with this. So ultimately more iteration time will happen, but while it is varied how long that iteration time usually takes, we eventually reach a state where we're like, this challenge is looking pretty solid and we want to get it in front of people. And so kind of the final step in the process before, you guys get to play a challenge is we hand it off to our QA team, and they kind of are like the final barrier between us and the players. And they'll find out any bugs, any kind of like weird finicky interactions that we don't want to be happening. And we're able to kind of improve upon those before we bring it to you guys. So unfortunately, I can't give a definite answer of a challenge from nothing to being fully complete takes like, however many months, because it's definitely something that varies between challenge to challenge. One thing I can kind of talk about is like some of the factors that make it like take longer or shorter. One of them is obviously like how complex is the interaction we're requiring of the player in the challenge. So something like sawing a tree down and having it fall in a certain direction is obviously something that's going to be a bit more complex to implement than, say, like just dropping off a sandwich at a table. And so usually those complex interactions will require a bit more iteration time and a lot of back and forth with the team with testing and, improving upon it. Another thing that sometimes will make a challenge take longer or shorter is how we're actually making use of the environment. So in RoboCo, we have, like a set that is the level where the challenge takes place in. So for Bistro, it's a restaurant set. But then for some levels, like Saw Log, that set kind of extends past the, standard area. It's a bit longer, there's more to do in there, and so that sometimes may require a bit more iteration time if there's, essentially more level to iterate over with how things are laid out. But yeah, ultimately I can't give like a final number of this is how long it takes, but that's kind of some insight on, I guess, like what kind of makes it take like approximately however many months.
Thanks, Alan and Luke, and thanks to all our viewers for tuning in. Next time, we'll be shining a spotlight on the art of RoboCo, so stay tuned for more. In the meantime, visit our website to learn more about the game and add RoboCo to your Steam wishlist. See you all next time!